Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a huge question, one that has been debated for, well, centuries. Are we just products of our environment, or are we the real masters of our own destiny? Let's get into it. So, let's start right there. This is the big question that geographers and thinkers have been wrestling with forever. To put it really simply, does nature pull all the strings, or are we the ones in control?
At its core, this whole debate really boils down to two totally opposite ways of seeing humanity's role. On one side, you have the idea that we're passive agents, basically just reacting to the world around us, and on the other, that we're active agents, totally capable of making our own choices and building our own futures.
Now, for a really, really long time, one of these ideas totally dominated the conversation, and that was environmental determinism.
So what is it?
Well, the central idea here is that everything about a society, we're talking its culture, its history, its level of development, is caused and controlled by the physical world. The people who believe this saw humans as pretty passive beings, just constantly being shaped by things like climate, the soil, and the mountains around them.
What's pretty amazing is just how old this idea is. This wasn't some modern invention. Nope. We can actually trace its roots all the way back to ancient Greece with Aristotle. He was explaining differences between people based on their climate. And then the idea gets picked up centuries later by thinkers like Montesquieu. It gets systemized by a German geographer named Friedrich Ratzel, and then it really takes off in the US thanks to geographers like Ellen Churchill Semple and Ellsworth Huntington.
And this quote right here, this just says it all. Semple's statement is about as direct and to the point as you can get. It basically suggests that humanity is fundamentally a creation of its physical surroundings, that the Earth has, and I quote, entered into our bone and tissues, into his mind and soul. Whoa.
But as you can imagine, these really broad, kind of rigid generalizations of determinism, well, they didn't sit right with everybody. So, as a direct reaction to it, a whole new school of thought started to pop up, and it was mostly happening in France.
This new theory was called possibilism. And its main argument is that the environment doesn't determine our path. It just offers a whole range of possibilities. So yeah, nature might set some limits, but in the end, it's human culture, our traditions, and our own free will that decide which of those possibilities we're going to chase.
Possibilism was really championed by a group we now call the French School of Thought. Leading the charge was Paul Vidal de Blache. He argued that it was a group's lifestyle, not the physical environment, that was the main thing in their development. And then his contemporary, Lucien Febvre, gave the whole movement its most powerful slogan.
This one quote, Matt, it just perfectly captures what possibilism is all about. It completely flips the script. All of a sudden, humanity isn't just a passive product of nature anymore. Now, we're the active master and judge of all the options that nature gives us. It's a huge shift in focus from nature's power to human power.
So, okay, we've got two powerful competing ideas here. Determinism, where nature's the boss, and possibilism, where humanity is. But as you can probably guess, neither one of these philosophies was exactly perfect.
Looking at them side by side like this really makes the conflict crystal clear, right? Determinism sees nature as a dictator, which makes our role totally passive. Possibilism, on the other hand, reframes nature as more of an advisor, putting us humans in the driver's seat. It's a really deep disagreement about who or what gets the final say in the human story.
So the biggest argument against determinism was that, well, it just didn't hold up when you looked at the real world. Critics pointed out that you could find almost identical physical environments that had produced wildly different cultures. Think about it. The amazing civilizations of Greece and Rome grew up in a Mediterranean climate. But similar climates in places like California or Chile or South Africa, they didn't produce the same result. That was a huge crack in the theory.
But possibilism wasn't off the hook either. Critics argued that by focusing so much on human choice, it kind of risked ignoring the very real, very powerful limits that nature puts on us. I mean, you can't just choose to grow bananas at the South Pole, right? So possibilism could sometimes go too far, exaggerating human freedom and downplaying the hard and fast limits of the physical world.
So this back and forth between two pretty extreme positions, it led a lot of geographers to start looking for a more balanced, a more nuanced approach. It was becoming clear that the answer wasn't either or. They needed to find some kind of middle path that could take the truth from both sides.
And this led to a compromise, a new idea sometimes called neo-determinism or stop-and-go determinism. It was proposed by an Australian geographer named Griffith Taylor, And it basically suggests that while the environment doesn't lay out our exact path, it absolutely sets the limits on our journey. Humans are active agents, we have free will, but nature still draws the boundaries of what's actually possible.
Taylor used this absolutely brilliant analogy to explain it. He said that humanity is like traffic. We're free to choose our direction, our destination. The environment, though, acts like a traffic controller. It can't force you to take a particular road, but it can absolutely stop you, it can slow you down, or it can change your rate of progress. So nature sets the speed limit, but we're still the ones holding the steering wheel.
The big takeaway from all this history is that this is not just some dusty old academic debate. The way we answer this question, are we passive products or are we active creators, it profoundly shapes how we take on the biggest challenges we're facing today.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final question. As we face these massive global environmental challenges, like climate change, are we just puppets of a planet that we ourselves have altered, forced down some determined path? Or are we still the masters of possibilities, free to choose a totally different future? This centuries-old debate has honestly never been more relevant.